I think that one of the more like confusing things about artistic expression is understanding the impact that it has on other people when you share that artistic expression,
Yes.
such as like when Linkin Park released Hybrid Theory and then Meteora the following year. It just sent a message of consistency that
Continue.
Welcome to This Feels Funny.
I'm going to go first. I'm Kat West.
I'm Tyler Jones. And this is a silly podcast that we host about real feelings.
Real feelings, don't we all have them?
Yeah, sure do.
Isn't it easy to take them so seriously?
100%. And just in case you're wondering why the fuck Kat's on her phone when we're recording the podcast, is today we're actually going to be talking about, and don't worry, I'm coming back for you. Don't worry, I'm coming back to defend you. I'm defending you preemptively here. As if anybody's going to wonder. If you're wondering why Kat's on her phone on her podcast, come at both of us, but you got to come through me first.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that dynamic, actually.
I don't think that they're okay with that.
They might not be, but I am terrified of confrontation, okay?
No,
Talk to him about it. He will handle it much better than me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Anyway, now that I'm done threatening our audience members,
I'm looking at my. I talk about being a comedian on this podcast, but one of the things that I also am, and I talk about this on stage, is a poet, and I'm looking through my book of poetry.
Yeah.
And probably gonna read one that I read for the shows later on in this episode, because we're going to talk about creative expression.
Yes. And like the importance of just expression in some sort of capacity, especially, I'm sorry, like in some sort of creative capacity and how it's helped us.
Yeah.
Specifically, because you tend to find that people don't really respect comedy as an artistic art form.
Yeah, but it is.
It really is.
It truly is.
I will say this. And I'm going to not get hot about this one.
Do many people sully it? Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And also, if somebody says, I don't know, man, I'm pretty funny. My friend said I'm funny. I'm just going to go up there and wing it.
You gonna make bad art.
Yeah.
That's cool. We all got to make bad art before we make great art. That's also something to keep in mind when you think about creatively expressing yourself.
But on the flip side of that, though, I will say, if you are thinking about doing stand-up comedy, I will say for the first like 1, 2, 3, 4 even times, it literally actually just is getting up there and doing it and, and know what it feels like. So like winging it isn't bad. Just know that it takes more than that after the fact. But dude, yeah, if you want to do stand-up comedy, fucking go to one of the many open mics that are out there and just go up there and just know what it feels like to be up there. It's jarring.
It truly is. And I think that sometimes people see comics go up and it seems like they're just riffing the entire time. And that's part of the art of it.
Yeah.
Is making people think that it is this just happening right now in front of you.
It's literally
in real
acting.
time. No, it is acting to an extent. And I'm like, yeah, they seem like they just came up with it, but that is all pretty planned out.
Yeah. I mean, and also a fun thing is like, I feel like a lot of the things that comics talk about, I will say this, we're going to have fun with this one. I'm about to go in for like a 30-second thing. A lot of the things that comics talk about, it's very exaggerated. So not every comic is a sex addict, drug addict, alcoholic, yada, yada, yada. But there are fun things we talk about. But here's the deal. One thing, I have watched Kat West do comedy for quite some time now. You've been doing it a little longer than me in a serious capacity, and you're very good at it. I respect you and what you do. I have seen Kat, and then I've gotten to know Kat subsequently. Now, when you watch Kat do stand-up comedy, you're like, damn, this is wild. And I've heard people say like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, I just went through a breakup the other day. I just went on a date, blah, 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 all this other stuff. And I know when I watch Kat that I am watching the rantings of a crazy person. 100% true things coming out of this person's mouth.
That's something I say is like, I'm like, yeah, some people make up their jokes. Mine are all real, unfortunately. Yeah,
It's
that was
so-
all true.
It's so wild, and it makes me, and it is a trip, and you gotta watch Kat do comedy sometime if you have not, because dude, it's like, that's all who you are.
It's
And,
mostly
yeah.
it is stream of consciousness, but again,
Yeah.
I still plan it out.
Oh,
There
yeah,
is
you do.
there is thought behind the way that, but it. I mentioned this in the people pleasing episode, but comedy is super cool because I am rewarded for being a little bit like triggering or like mildly
Yeah.
offensive, and so that's why it's a fun art form for me, because making people a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's a way that comedy, like, you kind of want to build some discomfort so that you can break the tension. And a lot of times what we all want to do when we get uncomfortable, we want to laugh.
Yeah, 100%.
We want to let out that discomfort with a laugh. And so it's fun for me to fully unhinge and be like this different little version of myself that's just kind of wild and just says things that I would never probably usually say in conversation.
Yeah.
And I can say them on stage. And so that's why it's such a fun creative outlet for me.
Yeah. First of all, I also want to reiterate, I don't actually think you're a crazy person. I just said that for comedic value.
But I like
But it's fun to say.
when I come up on stage, people don't expect me to say and do the things that I do on stage. And I like to think about comedy as like something that you don't expect me to be that way. And like, yeah, you should doubt your perceptions.
Oh, yeah.
And people are going to say things that would surprise you. And,
yeah.
and that's something that's so cool about art, is that it shows a side of you that, maybe you don't normally show or that isn't normally seen. And you're kind of putting it in people's face. And
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, look at it. That's
Yeah.
me too.
No, that's actually how I feel every time I see like I if I were to make like an assumption about any like comic that goes up, especially like the male comics, if I were to make an assumption that comic is going to be one way and then they surprise me with how different they are, it is 100% Lee Kimbrough.
Oh, yeah.
I look at him and I don't expect him to go up there and have the fucking stories that he fucking sews together
Yes.
the way that he does. So
Yeah.
shout out, homie. That's all we're doing on this podcast, just shouting out our fucking buds.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's comedy's a weird one. That's a big form of artistic expression, but we're more than that.
Yeah.
We're more than that for this podcast. I know that you are a poet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you started doing years ago. And it's not just writing poetry. It's
But performing it. I've been
performing
writing
the
it for a
poetry.
long time, but it was
Yeah.
like 5 or 6 years ago that I started using poetry as a performance art. And it is so transformational. And if you see me do poetry, you probably wouldn't expect some of the things that I say in stand up to come out. And it's the dichotomy of Kat. Like, is like, there's this very sweet and genuine and kind side of me that, like, I write a lot of poems that are about mental health and about sadness and about moments of presence within nature, right? Amidst all of the darkness around us all the time. And then I come up on stage and I'm talking about pussy flaps. And those are both true. I am all things, okay?
That's a wild sentence, by the way. And I really liked it a lot.
It's a good sentence.
No, I've seen you. I've had the absolute pleasure of seeing you do poetry live in open mics. I was there that one night that you did it with the band at Ludlow.
Oh my gosh,
that was great.
so much fun.
I've heard you do it on the deck of Chameleon,
Yeah.
in front of a bunch of comics that were captivated by you
Mm-hmm.
doing it, and then I've seen you do it at your Sins and Virtues series as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, man, it's a gift to watch and hear. Some of your poems have really stuck with me a lot, and I think that it's super interesting to also watch. You said the dichotomy of Kat, right?
Yeah.
There is a weird similarity watching you do stand-up and poetry, watching you actually perform it.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, this is the same person.
Yeah.
This
yeah.
person does both of these things for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
And
neither one is a mask. They are
and
both
they're true
true.
to yourself.
They're
Yeah.
both true to me. Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing. I love that a lot. I know that I really wanted you to share a short one with our listeners.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. So if you have one that you want to give
Yeah.
to them right now,
So
I'm sure that we'd love it.
you mentioned the Sins and Virtues show, so I will just very briefly summarize that. And this is a poem that I opened with a couple times during that show. But it was a 7-week series, which was so masochistic of me. Oh my goodness, it was so hard. Every week I had different poets and comedians on, and we did one of the 7 deadly sins and its associated virtue. And this is a poem called Mirrors that is just like what I tried to explain when I hosted and I opened up the show is just we all have things we can show each other. And that's kind of the idea with this podcast as well. There's all things that like we can see and then we recognize them in someone else and we feel more seen and able to go about the world knowing that someone else shares that experience.
Awesome. We'll
Mirrors.
There we go.
I find a little piece of me as you show me the gears and the parts of you. Did you know? I think that way too. A little piece of you, a little bit of me, not to have or take, but just clearly see. I'm a little weird and sad sometimes, but so are you. Did you know that makes it easier for me to still be silly too? Because as I look around and I see myself like inside, I see how we all try to hide the sad, the guilt, the joy, the pain, but somehow sharing it makes it easier to exist again. I found even more pieces of me in the mirror of you. It's shining now. Oh shit. Me too.
I love that one.
It's just
good.
sweet. It's just kind and sweet, you know?
It really is. Mm-hmm. It really brings me back to that point of like artistic expression doesn't have to be something dramatic. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be over something so negative. Mm-hmm. It can be about something that's beautiful and positive, kindness, beauty, anything like that. And I mean, that's how we typically see that a lot in like the most popular form of artistic expression in music. But I mean, so when we think about it, like we think of poetry, people tend to think like that are not as familiar with poetry.
Yeah.
Like sadness.
Sad or angry or heavy and a lot. And a lot of times that is what people bring to poetry events and poetry mics. And so sometimes it like I even go to poetry mics. I'm like, this is too much.
Yeah.
For me right now. And it can be a hectic energy to engage in, to go to a poetry show. You'd never know what you're going to get.
I learned from your series how much poetry is appropriate for like this on a subject of sex.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Especially like I've noticed when women like talk openly about just anybody in that talks openly about sex in general, but I've noticed like a lot of women do this that I've heard do poetry. It's like that's like a safer place for them to viscerally express the complexities of sexual intimacy.
Yes.
And I'm just like somebody like Casey and Sandra and Grace, they like
all amazingly talented poets.
Right in my heart. And who was the on your last night for Gluttony, young blonde gal? I said that like such a dad. The young blonde gal.
Fucking, I'm really sorry. We've been messaging on Instagram. I feel like an asshole right now.
No. I mean, she was stellar.
She is.
You know which one I'm
so
referring to?
Good.
Yeah.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
She was
Jennifer Ashelman.
Jennifer Ashelman. I don't know why I kept wanting to call
names
her
are really hard for me.
Something. But no, Jennifer is fantastic as well. So I mean, those four.
And her friend Caitlin was on the previous week. Yeah. There were just so many people who were so talented, and it was really cool.
I love that. So yeah, poetry's a big one.
And while we shout that out, I just want to say it can be hard to find safe places for artistic expression. And the venue that we had that show at, Commonwealth Sanctuary in Dayton, Kentucky, is such a safe place to experience art, to perform art. They are really genuine people who run it. And that is something that can be hard to find within the world, right? It can feel performative or selfish to try and go out and share your art. And they're building a safe place for people to just share and to feel human and feel seen.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate them.
We love you guys.
We do.
Now, so when it comes down to poetry and like how you express that, how does is that something you feel like you can fall back onto when you feel like maybe you're missing something or you don't know where to go or you're feeling lost?
Yes.
It's like I can just always come back to poetry.
Yes, especially because poetry can be very much a self-centered, not self-centered, but like it's about me.
Yeah.
I can go and I can experience the full gamut of poetry without performing it. I can be writing poems just for me, whereas comedy is dependent upon other people hearing it.
That's true. Yeah.
That's part of the art form that is so weird, is that and it can change depending on who's in the room. You say things the exact same way and it doesn't hit the same way. Whereas poetry, I can just be like, oh, I want to get this out. I want to write.
Yeah.
It's my favorite way to actually just release things.
Your friend Luca actually said this, and for some reason, I think he meant it to be funny, but I will say, I respect it a lot. He goes, here's the deal. Whether you guys laugh at my poetry or not, I can't bomb. It's impossible for me to do so.
Exactly.
And I was like, dude, I think you were just trying to be funny, but you said something incredibly profound and true when you said that, my
Yes.
guy, comparing
Yeah.
the two. He can do funny poetry and nobody can laugh, and he's not bombing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just like the reaction. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you've heard my little poetry. I won't do the whole bit right now, but yeah, like
Yeah.
silence is okay with poetry. You're just, you
Yeah.
know, it's different than comedy.
It's such a true bit, though. It's so good. I
Yeah.
like the way you deliver
So
that.
we've talked about poetry and comedy being an outlet for me. Obviously, comedy is one of the outlets for you, but something that you don't really talk about is the other creative outlets that you have,
Yeah. Yeah.
which are probably a lot longer standing and more deeply embedded in, you know, who you are.
Yeah. I ever since I was a young boy, just a little boy, I have been, I truly have been obsessed with like music and how it correlates to an experience that is shown.
Yeah.
So basically, cinematography, cinematic music, instrumental music. I started writing and recording my own instrumental music in a number of different genres. I've been in like bands and stuff like that where I've performed and written songs with people and done like my, you know, songwriting, my own form of poetry and like singing and things like that. But like what stands true to me is doing strictly instrumental music, where on like almost the complete opposite spectrum of what you do. I want to write music that gives everybody else the permission to write their own emotion or feeling to it, right? So since about 2006 is I think the time that I wrote my first song and recorded it.
Okay.
And I think I did several a week up through even today.
Wow.
I checked it the other day. I have like 374 songs completed
Wow.
and written since then. And I've gone back and listened to them, and I'm really proud of how much better I've gotten at music. But they've changed so much over time. But what I try to do is think of like a space that I enter into in my head in more like a weird meditative way, and it allows me to just escape to this emotion. And I imagine it being acted out or created in some way through nature, through some way with the people that interact with each other. For instance, recently, most recently, as we tie video to it, I had written a song a long time ago, actually for somebody that it was in 2000, like 2005, 6, 7. I wrote this song for somebody that I was deeply in love with from youth until actually 2009, but I wrote the song in 2007. And I had never, it was about like the bravery that comes with like unrequited love or uncertainty, and then how that morphs into, oh my God, it wasn't unrequited love. It was love that I didn't know how to take action on due to my own where I was, and the grief associated with subsequently, as you do when you're younger, and in time you lose that. And I re-recorded that song, redid it for this person, and rewrote it, and put a video to it. And it's a really fun video of two people that were meeting, and I was it subs in with me playing the guitar and for the song, and then these two people that were like that came finally across each other in this incredible chemistry for just like 2.5, 3 minute song, and being able to write that. And I'll never forget my friend Amanda's mother texted her and said, forward this to Tyler. I watched his video and it was so powerful and moving, and the music is beautiful. And I was like, damn, that makes me feel really good. But what I got out of doing that was A, sharing with the world something important, but B, it really, I want to know your thoughts on this, because you have poetry, you have things that you can refer back to. It took me back to just such a beautiful experience that I got to have, like revisiting that music and then recreating it in a way that was healthy for me.
That's actually a really interesting, like, that's the cool thing about making things when, especially when they're coming from that true place of like, it's something that you struggle with, you know, or something that's significant of like going on, is that it becomes then this catalog
Yeah.
of where you've been and the way that you felt.
That's awesome.
And
That's a good way to put it.
It becomes this way that you can see yourself outside of yourself because you've made something that's not you.
Yeah.
And it kind of can depersonalize your experiences.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I like to think about I go back and I listen and I say, what was I going through at this time? What was I experiencing this time? What was I feeling? And what I also enjoyed was like, you know, as I said, my friend's mother had said it, like, this is very powerful and moving. It's like, why was it powerful and moving to you?
Yeah. And it's different. That's the cool thing. Yeah. Like, it's a really interesting thing about art.
Mm-hmm. Especially with like something that has like true poetry or instrumental music, in my opinion. And that's the nice part. Is like, I can watch a scene in a show. I mean, just to like, put something that's even cheesy out there or like kind of nerdy, is like, did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Daenerys Targaryen's dragons
Yeah.
have their own, the House of the Dragon has their own music.
Yeah.
And it's that composer, first of all, fucking the best.
Okay.
He is unbelievable. But that right there, something like the I guess it was like this, that song moved me
Yeah.
because it was like, why does the general feeling of that song, that music, so tragic for something so powerful?
Yeah.
And by the end of the show, I don't know if this was intentional, but prior to us watching the show with everything that had gone on before, we knew there was tragedy within that like family. She's coming out of this. There was still no triumphant note in that music.
Yeah.
Ever. No matter which way that they took it, in my opinion, just from how I heard it. And then by the end of the show, I was like, oh, never mind. It makes perfect sense why this is fucking tragic sounding. But it was just like so wild to think of like the meager like sadness of something so brutal. And I don't know. I think that music does that for me. I will sit there and overanalyze the ever-living shit out of a soundtrack and how it makes me feel.
Interesting. I was talking to somebody else last night. I went to a show and I was talking to somebody afterwards that is very much in music, and they were talking about they were giving some like mild critiques to the show. Like nothing wild, but they were just like, they're amazing musicians and they didn't really take any big chances. That was what their critique was.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was so interesting because when I listen to music, I'm fully just present because I know nothing about music.
Sure.
And so I truly am just enjoying whatever cacophony they decide to give me. And then I'm just allowing that to make me feel whatever it makes me feel, because it's one of the very few things that allows me to leave my logical side of my brain.
Fair. Yeah, no, that's good.
And that's why I don't want to understand any more about music.
All right.
I don't want to know more
from
from a technical perspective, because then I'm going to be pulled out of that experience. And like with comedy, it's gotten harder for me to just enjoy stand-up comedy because I'm looking at it like, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? Why'd they put that joke there? Wow, it really worked better when they said it this way.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at all of these logical things. But I think that the real true like value in art is when it forces you out of that logical brain and it makes you just have an experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just being present with whatever they're trying to conduct for you.
With whatever it is, it's like whether it's poetry, whether it's going to an art museum, seeing any kind of like form of physical art, music, stand-up comedy, acting, anything like that, it is a creation of something, whatever it is. And I'm glad that we're able to see that, because it allows us to enjoy the process of creating art more.
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of people that do some form of art can appreciate the same thing too. And what's nice is it's always something you have. Like nobody can really take it from you.
Yes.
There can be circumstance that can take it, but no one person can truly take away your ability to create something if it's something you have to fall back on. And art can also be like whatever you want it to be. If you want to get crazy, if you're like, I have no artistic ability, you do.
Yeah, that's something I wanted. I was going to interject just now, is that like something that I've realized in this past year. I really think, and I really believe this. I say this to people. Like I think every single person is an artist in some capacity. It's just whether or not you choose to use art as an expression form. I think that every single person is capable and has something that they could let out that other people would see and would help them through their own experience.
Sure.
You know? And if you're somebody that's listening to this and you're like, oh, I don't have any artistic talents, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you are wrong. That is not true. Whether or not you've exercised these talents or you've tried, like, that is something that I think every single person has some ability to create something that is just theirs.
Yeah.
And that is worth sharing, or not even worth sharing. That's the thing, is like, I think within capitalism, we are like, oh, we got to make art for a reason, to make a thing.
True.
I'm like, no, you just can make art anytime.
Yeah, if you think
Anywhere.
I've shared over 300 songs on the internet, you've lost your fucking mind.
Yeah,
and
it's so important,
Yeah.
I think, to have some things that you do that are just for you.
Yeah.
That you create because you want to create them.
Yeah, 100%.
And for no other purpose.
And that goes into that other point too, with like, if you are creating something and you're trying to be good at it or whatever, you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it to get better at it, whatever it is. It's not the fact that you don't have creative ability or you don't have artistic ability. It's the fact that you are allowing yourself to compare yourself to other people who have been probably doing this for decades.
And probably for a long time before they chose to share it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's okay that they can. It doesn't make them better than you at it.
Yeah. I mean, they might be better at you.
Well, no,
but
yeah,
that doesn't mean
sorry.
that it's not worth doing.
Exactly. Sorry. Thank you. That's a good correction. Sorry.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's not worth doing because they are better than you at it. You
Yeah.
know? And cool. Well,
I want to share really quick. I think this will be a fun clip. If you're listening, then you're not gonna be able to see it. But this was my most recent. I don't do a lot of visual art, but the other day I was feeling real explodey. You know what I'm saying? If you listen,
Yeah.
if you ever hear my steamboat joke, that's just kind of what it's all about. And I was just feeling really explodey and feeling really. And this was the thing that I chose to make. And I was like, I think I just gotta. So we can zoom in on this for a clip. It just says "fuck" in pen.
amazing.
It was a lot of, I just was like, I need to scribble with pen. And like, that's art too. Am
Yeah.
I going to put this on a gallery wall? No. Did it help? Yeah. That's it. And then there's a really, really sweet and sad poem on the back,
Nice.
which I will not read right now.
Yeah.
It's the one about crying that I sent you.
Oh, yeah, I love that one. I'd frame that though. So anyway,
It says "fuck" in huge letters, and it says, "I don't feel like myself yet" at
we're
the
gonna
bottom.
put that on the. We're gonna put that on the podcast.
I'll frame it for you. I'll make it a little better, and I'll frame it for you.
We'll put it on the podcast refrigerator.
I love
the refrigerator downstairs in the
Yeah,
kitchen.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. And everybody walks in and they're like, "What is this?"
That's
and I'm like, "You know
unbridled-
what it is.
Unbridled rage. That's what
You
it is.
know- yes, exactly.
I had to get some out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, fuck off. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you think? Oh,
He's art now.
he is art.
You were art before you were that, but
You were art
Now
before you
you-
were art.
now, yeah, you were always art. You always had it inside you.
For non-video listeners, we're speaking to our producer, the Moose.
He's staring at me. We've both headbutted him today.
Yeah.
He's forgiving though. It's like totally cool. He's actually like really great. Yeah.
If you want to see the Moose, please follow us on Instagram at This Feels Funny Pod. You'll actually see the Moose at one point, the first time that he and Kat kissed. You can also make sure to follow us on Spotify, all of your streaming platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure to comment. Make sure to like, right?
Yeah.
Once that happens, we get... What did I... Why are you laughing?
I was just thinking, like, I'm at the end of the, like, you have all this professional things to say, and I'm just over here being like, "Hi, I'm Kat West. I hope you love yourself. Goodbye." Like, that's my role in the outro. Is just like, "I'm really happy you're here, and I think you're a lovely human being, and I think you should make some art." And he's like, "Do all the things that we need to tell you, and he's doing such a great job.
Share it with your friends. That's the most important thing you can do.
Please do.
Share it with your friends and tell people about it, so that way we can get really, 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 really,